Hello everyone, a very good morning to all. Welcome to the Greater Good podcast. The Greater Good podcast is all about the 4 pillars of SmartQ, one of them being the greater good side of things that we do. We are having our first guest, who is none other than Karan Jadhwani, a dear friend of mine and a very kind soul. So he's a nature conservationist and he's been in that space for a very long time. He's doing a lot of great work in that field. He's written and published one book and another one is on the way. And he has a community and a platform for nature conservation. And it's going to be a very informative session for us. We're going to learn and educate ourselves about the nature and conservation efforts and how someone can be involved and what exactly is nature conservation in the first place. So Karan, welcome to the show and thanks for agreeing to be the first person to kickstart the podcast. Very happy to have you.
Yes. Hi Keshav, and thank you very much. It feels good to be here also. So this is how we greet people in conservation. So can you do this, say coral polyps?
Coral polyps.
Yes.
Oh, these are the polyps.
Yes. So this is one of the many ways we greet people. We set the tone going for lesser known species. Probably coral reefs is what we create awareness by doing this. Yes.
Great.
So coral polyps to you. Yeah.
See, yes. We should the same coral polyps to you as well. I think this is also good to practice when there's COVID-19 so that you don't need to come in contact with the other person. Yeah. But I think I want to, before we kind of get into your story and what you've been doing, I just want the viewers who are going to watch this, them to know that what is conservation and what exactly does it mean, because people would have heard it in many ways and forms. People would maybe know a lot about it or maybe involved, but for a general person who wants to understand this and maybe get involved as well, if you have to give a brief summary, what exactly is conservation and what all does it involve?
Yes. So the thing is, conservation is actually a very basic term. Scientifically, it has been put forth in very different ways. But the easiest way I would describe it, or the most, probably the most relatable way, would be that conservation is simply a thought process that anyone can imbibe in their day-to-day routines. So, unlike what hierarchy has taught us, the top to bottom institutional way of learning teaches us of sectors where pharmacy is one sector, banking is one sector. It's probably put conservation in another sector. Right. But that's more of a myth, because conservation is something that everyone needs to practice and can practice in their daily routines. By simply making small shifts in your consumption patterns. You're somewhere going to help some creature somewhere in the world. By simply avoiding using a plastic pen, you're going to help a turtle somewhere, or help save a cow from probably chewing the refill somewhere. So it's more cross-disciplinary. It is not just one area, or conservation is not restricted to someone from a science background only. So it is just a thought process of conscious living is how I would say conservation is.
And even though you're in a city, probably if you're in a highly industrialized city, or if you're in a tier 2 city or a farm, you can still practice conservation and be mindful of that, is what you're saying. It's open to all. It's not something which is generally for someone who's staying away in a farm or something like that to do this.
Absolutely. So this is another myth where people believe that conservation is for people who live in near forest fringes, or probably who are working in deep ocean floors. Conservation is actually for everyone, and you'd be interested to know that science really says that most damage what has really been caused to the environment is from larger cities. So the same people who really caused it have the power to reverse it. Right. So it's us people sitting in big cities who actually have it in us to reverse it, and change has to be done from here. So there's a lot that we can really do.
Right.
Starting from small ways that just avoid the use of plastic straws or single-use plastic, to ways where probably if you want to really go hardcore into species conservation, choose a species that you cite outside your balcony and begin from there. So there's a lot that one can really do. Conserve a green space, and avoid creating more of a concrete jungle.
Right. I think we'll delve into the examples of that, but I think the basic definition makes it so simple that anyone can build that mindset. It starts with the mindset and the thought process.
It starts with the mindset, and it's been said since generation that conservation really begins at home.
Right.
And we should go back to the drawing board and start from there. Because when we do that, we reinvent ways of living, and probably more conscious ways that are more respectful to all forms of life.
Right.
So that is an area we can focus upon as individuals.
Right. Interesting. So let's change tracks a little bit and start from your journey, right? Start from the beginning as to how you discovered, or maybe it was innate in you, but how did that journey start for you? Where did it start from? What experiences led you to going deep into the conservation space and starting to create impact over there?
Yes. So my love for nature is more than 2 decades old, and I think how it started was very interesting. So I think the first moments that I can recollect of where I found love for animals was when I probably held a puppy in my hand for the first time.
Okay.
So it was a moment I still remember, and it was a very sweet moment, one to hold on to for life. So it was one of the animal rescues in the community that we were doing. So for me, alongside formal education, partaking in animal rescues and rehabilitation was a part of my growing up years.
So this was during your school time itself?
Yes, as children. So just helping the community animals. So probably one rainy day we found an abandoned pup, who was crying for help. So when you really hold it in your hand, you see that it stares into your face with all that innocence, and it surrenders all of its life to you.
Right.
You really know that you have a connect, and you really can do something about it. So one fine day, then I got a puppy home, and then next day it was probably a kitten, and then a hen, and then that went into bringing a parrot and a rescued kite, a monkey.
Kite.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
so kites often get stuck on electric wires, and also the manja, the kite tying thread. So we've rescued all of them since years now, and then I would start bringing them home. And then obviously my parents would,
freak out?
Yeah, obviously, because one day you're bringing a monkey home and one day you're bringing a parrot home, and then saying that we have to take care of this.
But how did you get comfortable? So I know a pup is something that most people are comfortable with, or pup or a kitten, and maybe even a hen. But how did you get comfortable with a monkey and a kite, and how did you get that connection with an animal and feel comfortable with that?
So what happened is, with the influx of vehicles in the city, monkeys, the bonnet macaws, are found very frequently.
Sorry, what macaw?
The monkeys that we have here,
Okay,
the bonnet macaw.
Bonnet macaw. That's the breed of monkey?
the biological name of
Okay,
it.
that's the biological name.
Yes, so they're often found around
Like Homo sapiens?
Yes, like what we are saying, Homo sapiens, yeah.
Okay.
So they are often found in and around Bangalore, right?
So I also want it to be educational, like when there are certain terms, probably I'll
Sure.
I am probably learning myself, but I'll also probably ask some questions to break it down more.
Simple.
But please do use those terms, because that is an introduction to the field and trying to understand it.
So even earlier we thought that when we were writing our book whether to use these names or not, but then we realized at a young age when people can really learn of Harry Potter spells and pronounce them so well, why not species that just around us, living with us? So So then these monkeys were always exposed to vehicular traffic, and there are often cases of road accidents and stuff. So it so happened that they are helpless, so they're vulnerable at that moment, and then at that moment they don't think of attacking you, and then you're instinctively drawn towards holding them and taking them in to help them. So I think that's
looking for safety at that point.
Yes, so animals do communicate to us. It's just that we need to probably look at it in a more deeper sense. They do communicate for help. We'd also see so many videos surfacing on the internet where a deer comes out of deep from inside the forest and stops vehicular traffic.
Yes.
So rather than feeling threatened, if you really look at why it's doing that and understand the animal behavior, it's probably pointing at something.
Right.
So during a forest visit, a scientist even tried to follow the deer back, and then it took it to a place where the fawn was stuck in a puddle, and it wanted someone to help in a rescue. So they do communicate at many levels, but it's left up to us how we perceive it and understand. So we should probably just pay more attention to it and feel less threatened by it, because it's not going to attack you for no reason.
I think one is, it comes from 2-3 things, right? My take on that is that if you are receptive and aware of and generally empathetic about things around you, you will be able to relate to it. And that fear probably is put in through maybe media, movies, or maybe even sometimes how parents and everyone have raised us in terms of how to deal with the wild, right? So generally you tend to follow suit from there. But I think a very similar incident, I was just speaking to a colleague at work who actually saw a shark get washed up on the beach, and he had the courage to actually hold the tail of the shark and help it back go into the water. And he got the courage because he had done scuba diving before, and in one of the scuba diving events, the instructor actually showed them that there's a shark ahead and let's go, and they actually went and saw a shark in its natural habitat, and it was nothing like the movies. It was very peaceful by itself, just doing its thing, and it didn't matter how many humans were around it. It had no fear or no sense of threat, right?
So that's the whole
when
thing.
Perspective changed,
right? So that's the whole thing. Even as human beings, like supposing a burglar breaks into our house, right? We're going to feel threatened then. We're not going to offer the burglar a glass of water or welcome him like a guest, right? We're instantly going to chase him away. So same thing when we enter a habitat that is safe, that is a safe zone for the animal, for a wild animal, it is naturally going to feel threatened, because it's raising a young one there, and that is its area where it is finding food. At that space, if we are going to encroach and build a house or probably start digging a hole there, it is going to feel threatened, and its natural instinct is going to be to attack the opposite person. So when we set safe boundaries, when we respect habitats, when we respect homes,
right,
to its natural inheritors, the chances of an animal-human conflict is lesser then, right? So
yeah. And so back to your experience, right? So you brought monkeys and even kites home, and then how did people got comfortable with that at home as well, that this is who you are and this is how things will evolve? So yes, you can just continue from there.
Yes. So just like every person who grows up in Bangalore, I've had many walks in Lal Bagh and Cubbon Park where you're witness to tailor birds weaving houses and spotting a yellow oriole amidst the lush green landscape there. So
what is an oriole again? Sorry.
Oriole is a species of birds. It's you can spot it in Lal Bagh also and Cubbon Park also.
Okay.
So
it's a migratory bird.
No, it is a native bird of yes, of Karnataka. So somewhere down, so in fact, my first interactions with nature began with when my grandmom made me plant a tree. So we planted a mango tree together, and I picked up the habit of gardening from my grandmother. So when we planted this tree, it was still a sapling back then, and then that grew into a tree, and then that one tree attracts so much biodiversity. You see species of butterflies visiting the tree, and then you have red-cheeked bulbuls coming down to the tree. You have squirrels around the tree. You have bees during the fruiting process. So just one tree can create so much of an impact, in one person. So I think it did come down ancestrally to me also. Maybe from something as simple as planting a tree. And this is probably the story of many Bangaloreans or even people around India, because back in the day, people did respect nature a lot more.
Right.
People did give equal emphasis to planting a tree as equal to a career or raising a family. Today, of course, it's we live in an era of development and growth. So focus has shifted from there to meeting timelines and deadlines. So somewhere I think nature has taken a back seat with time.
There was an interesting insight that I took away from there, is that there are a lot of times people who are living in and around nature but there's a difference when you're involved with it in a deeper way. You spoke about planting a tree, right? Planting a mango tree, or the act of doing that, then you're getting involved and then you're observing what happens, how is the environment changing, there's bees coming, there's birds coming in. So you start seeing how one act is actually snowballing into a larger ecosystem. But when you are already, so if you already go into a farm, probably you may not appreciate, if people tend to go to, say, places where there's nature and they live there, but they don't really, it can sometimes get taken for granted that, okay, this exists. But once you start seeing that you can support the environment such a deep way just by one action, I think that deeply motivates you to do more in a way. Maybe that's the insight I got.
Yes. So that's what they say, right? It's small steps that really make big progress and change.
Yeah.
So we always say that, start them young. So, just do some. So, every child in his play is somewhere in a child's play, there is a seed of lifelong love for nature in every child.
Yeah.
So it's just that we need to nurture it. So, when children are really young, and you'd see that, you're often showing them images of an elephant, or introducing them to what, how the cat mews.
Right.
So why we do that is there is a natural drawing at a young age for children towards nature. So we just need to nurture that, and then it can transform into a big thing someday, maybe even a career in conservation, or someone who leads to becoming a scientist. So all we need to do is start them young, and bring in that introduction, and
right.
Nature takes on from there.
Yep. So when all of this was happening, you probably were in school, right? And those were your introductory steps or initial steps of rescue and conservation. How did it evolve from there as you got into college, and once you got a little more freedom and to do
Yes.
more?
So then there were two particular incidents I can recall. One was particularly this day, when we were having it was a summer day, and we went out to have coconut water. And back in the day, there was no strict ban on plastic straws. So coconut water was being served with the plastic straw.
Right.
And everyone there was mindlessly consuming the coconut water and throwing the straw away. And right next to us was a group of cows who were looking for food to forage upon. So they chanced upon the remains of coconut shells and plastic straws along with it. And then I saw, they were even picking up the plastic straws and chewing on it. And then that made me want to stop and rethink that how much does consumption of one shell of coconut really matter to us, and to what extent of damage are we really doing? And that made me stop and ask that guy, could we shift to something else, or could you collect this in a more different way so that it's not accessible for the cow? And then for a few days, dustbin was placed, and then people were throwing the straw in the dustbin. And then the cows didn't have access to it. But eventually, the same thing started again, and then the straws were found all around the vendor's place, and cows had access to it, and it was entering the digestive tract of cows. This made me want to further, see what are the alternatives we could do. And then I started studying and understanding alternatives for plastic straws, and then that led me to creating palm leaf straws from coconut trees, from branches of coconut trees. And then what we did was we created them.
Same tree creates straws as well.
Yeah, the same tree, which provides the water, also can provide you the straw. And then we went and gave it to the vendor, and then he was happy to take it and happy to use it then. So with that open mind, I think that somewhere stemmed that we need to further research on alternatives. And this was one way the nature library was even born.
Okay.
And apart from this incident, there was this day I was sitting in my balcony, and we have a fruit tree right outside our balcony, and that attracts a lot of birds because birds can sense the scents from long distances. So simple species which you'd find commonly from your balcony also play a major impact in the pollination process. And you'd find, if you really pay attention, they will attract bulbuls and barbets to your balcony. So that made me think that if one tree can really do so much, why not have more trees Why not? Why doesn't everyone have a fruiting tree around their house? And we encourage people to plant these trees, because then we were creating.
What are the most common fruiting trees which is easy
Banana trees are attract a lot of bees. The Singapore cherry tree also attracts a lot of
and are they
birds.
suitable for this kind of the Singapore cherry tree, for example?
Yes.
Are they suitable for?
So Singapore cherry tree is not really a native species, but it's been there for generations now, and it has adapted well to the urban landscapes of Bangalore. Another really easy way to attract biodiversity to your balcony or to your terrace or to your garden would be, using a simple curry patta tree. Curry patta has been used in Indian kitchens for generations now.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised to know that butterflies really look forward and look out for curry patta trees. And you could see generations of families of butterflies breeding in and around curry patta trees. So that's the easiest way and most accessible way to start. So that would be a very good suggestive measure to begin. So that's how we started. And then when we started encouraging people, we saw that people were inclined to doing it, but there was lack of awareness of how to do it. Because formal education taught us a lot about biology and mathematics, but didn't teach us how to really implement it. So that's when we stepped in and we said, we'll guide you through the process. We'll have volunteers, and then we'll set up WhatsApp groups where you can update us of the progress of the growth of the tree or what you really spotted around the tree, and post it on the group, and then we'll research further on it. And this way we built a larger community, and people went into mainstream research. Then we started understanding that Bangalore also has a lot of cavity dwelling bees that live in
dwelling bees.
Yes, cavity dwelling bees. So traditionally you only hear of honeybees, but there are cavity nesting bees which dwell in dry stems. Okay.
Dry stems. Okay.
Yes. So if you leave a dried tree,
Okay.
which dried tree or the parts of a tree that is dried and fallen down, which we commonly call leaf litter.
Okay.
So leaf litter is not really waste. It's actually home to so many species.
So you're speaking about something very interesting about the cavity dwelling bees and how the leaf litter becomes environment for them to thrive, right?
So when the nature library really began, there were instances where feedback was necessary for the common man to understand how nature is probably growing in an urban landscape. So this was the time when there was a family that was growing marigold plants in their garden and using the flowers for their daily puja.
Okay.
So once the flowers were picked from the plant, they obviously found no use of the plant.
Right.
So in a general scenario, a garden would be manicured or trimmed. But it so happened that the family was traveling, and because they were traveling, they forgot to trim the garden, and the stem was left to dry.
Okay.
So what happened then was nature took over from there, and the stem soon turned home into a species called as cavity nesting bees. So they call it home. So very often dried leaves and dry stems are regarded as leaf litter, and they are discarded. But it is actually home to so many species. Like if you pick up a dried leaf and look below it, you'd even find snails living around them. So this made us want to research more about cavity nesting bees that live in and around Bangalore, and probably encourage them to have more homes and live and create more transit corridors for them by having more dried stems placed in the same vicinity.
So the idea of nature library you mentioned came once you had that experience with the coconut vendor, right?
Yes.
And then from there, how did things establish itself? How did you build that platform? How did you gather all those stories to and become that place where you could share it and bring more people to speak about it?
So we realized that there was a gap in understanding, and there was a population that really wished to do more, but there was lack of awareness about how to do it,
right,
and probably how to do it living in an urban area. That's how the nature library really began, and a community started building, wherein there were questions raised and observations made, and scientific recording was started, and then data was collected, and this translated into more serious research work. And then
who funded all of this?
So funding was a major challenge we had. So it started on a voluntary basis where
Okay.
people just put in their available time and resources into it. And then we started, community building and crowdfunding it. And later we did have people funding for individual research work. So this little incident that I narrated to you about bees, later translated into people working around living more sustainably by looking for alternative for plastic pens and looking for alternatives for sustainable mensuration. So each volunteer went into their own field of work and probably connected with people who could more resonate more with their idea and found funding, developed their idea more, and brought in more scientific data. And this is how the community kept expanding. And before we knew it, we were a large community then doing cross-disciplinary work.
Okay.
And yeah, that's where we stand now. And then we decided to go beyond the urban
How big is the
landscape.
community now, and what are the kind of projects or initiatives, like if you can talk about some of the current work which you're really proud of that you are doing with the nature library, that'll be great to know.
Yes. So the largest work we took up was when we decided to go beyond the urban setup, enter into the periphery of Bangalore, and then beyond Bangalore's borders. So we are now running the COMOM initiative, which is the conservation of the marvels of Magadi, which is located in Ramnagara. So it was a transit corridor back in the day.
It's about 40 kilometers from here.
Yes, maybe a 1.5 hour drive from Bangalore city.
Okay.
But you'd be amazed to know, just where infrastructure and steel flyovers and the talks of helipads are on, just 1.5 hour from there, nature is blooming and growing in all its might. You find whistling ducks in the open, and then flapshell turtles living around a pond. And when you really visit that, there's a lot you can really do, and we have to conserve them for years to come, so that generations ahead can see them. So this is one big plunge we really took, and we're conserving 18 acres of natural land there.
How?
Which is the land there which was generally used and which has been taken over more for human-led activities, which has been bitten by the development bug just like every other city. And with news of Ramnagara connecting to Bangalore and becoming a larger city, I mean, we face a lot of threats. You must have read about news of leopard collisions with two-wheelers there. So it's not that leopards are entering our landscapes, it's that we have really ventured into the landscapes, into natural habitats of leopards and other species. So probably I feel in terms of what we're trying to address is that we need to follow permaculture somewhere. Permaculture clearly says that the excess of one thing...
Again, the permaculture, I have a sense of it, but for the audience, if you have to define permaculture in a simple way.
So permaculture is a very simple theory which has held the world together in my eyes. It is a largely practiced format in agriculture, but permaculture can be used across industries. Permaculture is just a simple theory which says that the excess of one thing will point to a deficit in another area. Like for example, if there is if you find an excess of mice population in a particular area, it clearly points at the lack of a cat population in the surroundings there.
Or snake population.
Yes. So this is how permaculture really works. So in pursuit of growth, becoming a mega city and all of that, we've somewhere left nature behind. So when we encourage everyone to follow permaculture living, find that balance, grow together with nature, grow with nature. And it's being done in a lot of places. It's just that it's a little more effortful to do.
Right.
But I think the objective is larger. The purpose is much higher. So
what I've also understood about permaculture is it's a natural way of designing a space where you can have maximum life thrive and creating. So we've always followed monoculture for growing our food in most of India. And that wasn't the way pre-British era. There was a lot of multi-cropping and there was permaculture followed. But permaculture basically tells you to embrace the natural terrain, diversity, and there's different layers of trees growing, different landscape. There's height, there's shade, there's water flowing because of the height difference, and that creates like an ecosystem for life to thrive. And that's the kind of encouragement that the principle.
Yes. So if you look at nature in general, there is life thriving at all levels. Okay, right from canopies, hilltops, right till if you dig it deep into the soil, you'd find creatures even there. So we need to be cognizant of creatures at all levels, and each one plays an important role in the ecosystem. And when you disturb that, we have to face the consequences of it. Like you often hear of water bodies drying out. Bangalore nearing day zero. All of these are interconnected. When a rooting system is so scientific, like when trees are planted, they have a huge network built below the soil which we can't see with the naked eye, and they are storehouses of water. They hold soil together, and when all of that is taken away and a concrete structure is really built, you are disrupting nature's balance. Permaculture is being disturbed there, so there is going to be an opposite impact created.
Right.
Like you said, we have to be more natural at all levels.
We were speaking about the project, the Commom project, right? Just tell us how it came into existence and tell us a little more about what happens on an ongoing basis in that project. It'd be interesting.
So, Commom initiative started through a call that we received of a leopard entering into a human territory. So what really happened was, while one of our known people were in Ramnagar, they called us saying that they have spotted a leopard, and the people living there were really furious about it, and they wanted to get the leopard out by any means, because it had attacked one of the dwellers' cattle there. A goat was attacked there, so they wanted to anyhow get the leopard out to secure themselves. So they were resorting to measures like burning firecrackers, and also they wanted to poison the leopard with food. So we saw that there was a need to at least bring about an understanding of that this can be dealt with in a better way. So when we drove to the site there, we discovered there was a natural pond, natural spring in a sense in the area, which is probably there since hundreds of years now. And that natural spring was being used for washing of clothes with chemical detergents and things. Then we realized that this is actually a very rich biome and needs to be conserved. So the leopard was just part of the ecosystem there, just living in its natural territory, but it was the human activities which were entering into a forest area. Right. Which made us set up our base, and that gave birth to the Commom initiative.
Right.
Soon we spoke to people there, and we did face a lot of backlash because people felt threatened that their livelihood depended on the water body, the natural spring there, and the wood that came out from the forest. And
so this was part of the forest land itself.
So it used to be a forest land years ago, but Ramnagar has become a proper city today, in a developed city.
Some encroachment.
Yes, a lot of construction development pushed green spaces more towards the forest, more towards the core of the forest, and left less room for any of the species to dwell there. Ramnagar, in fact, is also home to a number of hornbills. Wow. Also home to slender lorises. So a lot of species that you won't commonly find in Bangalore. Even rock agamas still live in Ramnagar. So we really knew that they have made it through centuries of survival there, braved a lot of odds, and this is the right time to protect the area. And then we set up a camp there, and today we collect data. We use techniques like construction of...
So did you work with the government in any way to secure like a parcel to, or how did you all come about saying, okay, this?
So the first step we needed to first action step we needed to do was to secure the natural spring, because natural springs are one of the wonders a rare spectacle today, and we really needed to save that. So the first thing we did was we built a bio fence around the pond just to protect it. And for this, thankfully, the officers and people working nearby, the local communities, were okay and helpful of the thought, provided they were, their livelihoods were not affected. So we took cognizance of that and, we built it together in a sense. And that bio fence today protects the pond in so many ways that it's encouraging population growth of native species there. Or it naturally doesn't allow people to encroach the pond or, draw water from the pond or, use the water for any other human-led activity. So that was the beginning of Comom initiative, and today it has taken a different shape where, the nocturnal life is being studied there, insects of the area, the fruiting process, the pollination in the area. And we're looking at various angles and how we could rebuild the transit corridor that existed, years ago.
And these are some of the day-to-day stuff, that the research that happens there and the study that happens there, along with the conservation, right?
Yes.
So research-led conservation is something which actually builds awareness to people around that community to start respecting it, and also helps in kind of replicating this in other areas and trying kind of looking at what is this. You spoke about NCHP, is it? NCBS, right? So is there some collaboration with such bodies where you bring in people to research and also build the entire view of the biodiversity and how to conserve it?
So the approach that we use generally to conserve any landscape is wholesome, in a sense that it is meant to protect the resources of the area, the biodiversity there, and the local communities. So it is a combination of these three elements. So in order to protect biodiversity, a lot of research work goes in, and we use construction of fences and probably altered timings for vehicular movement in the area, and mark protected areas there. Whereas to protect the resources, resources are mainly exploited by human-led activities. So we have to mark restrictions on them. And with regard to dealing with the local communities, we use transactional analysis and theories of human behavior, which can peacefully convert exploiters to protectors. So that is the theory we adopted. It is more of a systems thinking approach, because you're dealing with a whole system there with various variables where everyone is deeply interlinked with each other and has existed for years together.
Right.
So it is a very scientific approach and time-consuming tool, but we do see great result, and that keeps us going.
And these are mostly volunteer-led initiatives, or are they people who do this?
So we do. It's a teamwork. We have professionals. So a conservation project is a coming together of scientists, biologists, of artwork, people who are communicating the science communicators who are doing it in their own way. We have people who write poetry about what they see on field. We have people who are creating mascots of the creatures that exist in Ramnagara. We have translators who help us to communicate science in a local language which is more friendly to people who dwell there. We have people who are looking at alternate food sources for people who live there, because rabbit meat, hare meat rather, is a local delicacy there. And if you were asked to leave, or disconnect from a certain food source, it is naturally going to threaten your emotional front.
Right.
So we do have people who counsel people and shift them to alternate forms of food, because hare population is declining because natural habitat is depleting there. Yes.
Yeah.
So in fact, we have had very diverse encounters there. When simple way, when you ask a group of people not to burn firecrackers inside a forest.
Right.
They get revengeful and set the forest on fire. In way of showing agitation. So it has to be dealt with in a very, very peaceful way and in a very slow way, and also look at their lives and how they don't have to compromise in terms of food and a living.
Right.
So it is a coming together of all of these aspects.
So Karan, in your entire journey with conservation, has there been any time which made your conviction on advocacy for conservation is very important and we need to go full steam on that. Is there anything that you want to share in terms of a story around that?
So, if there was one particular incident which I could highlight, which made my decision more firm on environment advocacy, it would be this one day more than a year ago. It was again in Magadi, around our natural spring that we had found there. So, we found people washing their clothes in the pond using, toxic detergents and things. So, we patiently went and spoke to them about it. But it didn't really go down well with them, and an unpleasant exchange of words took place there, and it translated into a heated argument between us, where they even threatened to come back bigger and stronger the next day, because they refused to stop using the pond for washing purposes, because it was being done that way in many years. We understood that it was not the fault of theirs, because it was just a case of lack of awareness, because in a pond that's aged over 100 years, abundance of life really dwells in there, which was just not very made aware of. So it was very demotivating for us and demeaning at many levels to get into a scuffle of that level, where they threatened to come back stronger next day. But just after this, when they left threatening us, we heard the sound of a splash of water from the pond, and it was around sunset time, so we really looked closely to understand where the noise came from. And then it happened again, the splash of water surfaced again, and when we looked closely, it was a specimen of an Indian flapshell turtle that surfaced, and it came out of the water, and he walked towards us, passed by where we were standing, and walked back into the pond. And that day and today, we never saw it again. It almost seems like it came out there to say thank you, the scuffle you all got into, or the knowledge you all tried to convey about us meant something to us. And, that made me decide that this is something I want to do for the rest of my life.
That's a very deep connect with nature. I think it spoke to you in a way.
Yes, so it did communicate a large message that a small struggle that you may encounter, or a challenge you may face, is worth it, because you're somewhere making an impact. And this probably communicated in a way of gratitude from a species, saying that yes, we live here, and do help us in whatever way you can. So it encourages us to do more work and grow more.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I think that takes care of all the effort and struggle that you put to know that there is reciprocation from the other side, and that's what keeps you going in the hardest time.
Yes, absolutely.
Great to hear that, Karan.
Thank you, Keshav.
So speaking about the project, right? Obviously, it's not easy to do what you're doing, right? I'm sure there'll be a lot of challenges on an ongoing basis. What are some of the biggest problems that you deal with, and how are you coming around?
So in the whole conservation journey, I think the single largest challenge is human aspirations. So, human beings are a very stubborn population at some point, because in pursuit of comfort, luxury, health, hygiene, we've caused too much damage. And it's time that, the entire visual of reality is redrawn now. And this version of reality should be of today. The one that exists of 90s is obsolete. Today's picture is very different, because hundreds and thousands of species are on the vulnerable list, being threatened and being driven towards extinction. And scientists even believe that the 6th mass extinction has begun. We've seen 5 of them in the past, and this mass extinction is human driven. So it must be changed, and change points must be made now. So one major challenge we see is changing the human mindset, who believes that everything is ours, and we wish to develop the growth story of every city is a threat to biodiversity in general, because the two biggest challenges, the two biggest threats for habitats are one is industrialization, and second is luxury and land, hotels and leisure properties which are growing in
Really? So I thought they
forest areas.
help do some bit of conservation.
So they do, but the thing is, the whole many species in the wild are not not built to coexist with human beings. They need a natural habitat, and any form of disturbance in one species will snowball, will cause a ripple effect to other species. Okay, so that happens. Like in nature, if you study, so if in nature we study this, the topic is called interspecies interaction. So you notice that there is symbiosis and mutualism in nature. It takes two, for something to grow. For example, something as simple as figs. That we eat. Figs are largely dependent on wasps. So it takes a wasp to get in to a fig from a bottom opening to pollinate a fig. And if it was not for wasps, the pollination of figs would not happen. So we are dependent on a number of species for a number of another species to survive. So
also I've heard somewhere that there was an ISC professor who was researching the life of wasps and the structure they used to build, and the brittleness and the strength of the structure was determined. The quality of the structure was kind of declining and determined the kind of the. So I've heard that even wasps have a social structure within them, and it's highly kind of similar to how humans and chimps have a social structure within them.
Yes.
In a declining wasp population, you see that the houses also become very brittle, and the quality of offspring also becomes very. So what could be leading to say what human activity would be leading to wasps decline?
So a very simple way to convey this is the vulture story, where human activities are leading to weakening of certain species, or the modifying genetics in a lot of species, because somewhere or the other unnatural substances and chemicals are entering the food chain in more ways than one. Microplastics and hormonal injections being given to cows. All these are entering the food chain. Pesticides being sprayed for agricultural purposes. So eventually, the entire food cycle is exposed to these substances which they are not, biologically equipped to handle. So this is altering altering species, the way they are growing, the offspring, their populations, their habitats, their behavior. Everything is being altered. And it is largely again due to human-led activities and the need for more quality, the need for more output, the need for more production.
Yeah, in fact, human greed, the conservation is at odds with the.
Yes, so human need and greed has overtaken humanity in a sense. And it can be restabilized, because see, it is the same human beings who have caused it. We have the power to reverse it. It's just that we need to make an effort and nurture that effort to solve it.
And it also comes from, so there's another interesting thought maybe I'd like to share, that we've always considered ourselves as the top of the chain. Today we are, and that's why a lot of the way the world is played out is considering human first and then rest of the species next. And many years ago it was more equally balanced, and that wasn't how. It's just the last 2 million years of revolution that has made this big change. But the other thing is the growth of AI and technology is coming and telling us that we may not be the apex predator anymore. There can be things smarter than us, and I think that I don't know if that is required, but at least it's giving us a perspective and reflection that yes, we need not consider ourselves as the smartest, best, or like the strongest. There could be things beyond us, and that humility, once that comes in, I think that, and empathy, once that comes in, I think it's easier to spread this message and think of growing the conservation as a...
So this whole point, of what you said, is very true. In fact, every era that the universe has seen had a dominant species, and it changed with each mass extinction. So right now, yes, human beings are the dominant species at the moment. But when empathy sets in, a whole new world is built. This precise point gave birth to the industry, of sustainable living, where sustainable entrepreneurs are born, sustainable products are born, and it focuses on not compromising the needs of today, yet holding the ability of tomorrow. It doesn't compromise the ability of tomorrow. And I think this, with the growth of a parallel world, we can grow together with nature, and that should be our focus at the moment. The new vision of reality should be one of sustainable growth.
Right. So, if someone wants to get into this space, right, I think we've spoken enough of ways, people can get started and stuff. But for someone who's wanting to probably help in some of the ongoing efforts already, maybe volunteer or give their time, what are some of the areas or projects you would recommend that you are working on, or people are working on, that people can share their...
So like I always say, conservation is not a separate industry, like banking or pharma. Conservation is just a mindset and a thought process, and it is interdisciplinary. So if you really have a calling, that's all it takes to start. There are hundreds and thousands of species which are vulnerable today. Just choose a species you want to work around. You want to write poetry about it, you wish to create mascots and artwork about it, or you wish to increase their population, just write to us about it, and we will see how this can increase and grow and take a larger shape. And this is how every other conservation movement actually began, through a species of turtle was rediscovered after 70 years because one scientist decided to go and explore the forests of Kerala, and it led to conservation of a whole species. Similarly, the Baska turtle, which was on the brink of extinction, was rediscovered in one little forest. So no conservation effort is small, and anyone from any background can enter the world of conservation along with their existing careers. It is not needed to leave your existing careers and go live a new conservation career altogether. But one can do it parallelly together with their existing career. If you are a writer, you could probably stop using plastic pens to write, and make that a movement. Gather more people to shift to alternatives, use more nature-friendly, eco-friendly alternatives. Right. And then take that and see how that affects creatures and what is the output skill, bring in a quantitative element to it and the impact you're creating. And that could build a whole movement and probably find a direct connection to the species you are saving in pursuit of this.
I think that also where I was coming from is, if there's a community which is there, which part of a larger community, there is a belonging and efforts as they're putting it independently, they will also get that encouragement to go in a larger way, right? So if there's a community as such where they could be a part of, if you have...
Yes. So at the Nature Libraries, we are working on several projects parallelly, and we are always open to having more people volunteer with us or work with us in any area of their interest. So all they need to do is just write in to us, and we'll see
the thing on the bottom.
Yes, probably have the link put, and people could just write in on areas of their interest, and we'll see which project would interest them, right, and where we find a common ground and grow together on that. That's and I'm sure we can take make a big difference with that little step.
Yeah, and our interest is to see how we could support as a Smart Q, as a set of people who want this movement to grow. Yes. How we could support it through a podcast, talk about it, bring more awareness, as well as get people to start doing in their own small ways. And with that, I actually wanted to touch upon one of the last areas which I'm really interested to know about. So you're into writing books. You've already written one book, and you're writing your second book. So can you tell us a little more about both the books and what is the message from that?
Yeah. So I always believe that literature is a great tool to communicate science and to bring about change. Because if we go back in history, a lot of movements really began from a single article that was written or a single news, a news clipping that surfaced.
Right.
So literature has long been an important tool of communication, and the same works with science to communicate, to facilitate science. And like we discussed earlier, the era we live in today, the world has never seen such high consumption patterns before.
Right.
And this is affecting species world over. And that's when I decided that I have to create a literature for an all-encompassing approach which could be friendly to people to practice at large. Because human aspirations are different. We can't expect everyone to go vegan, or we can't expect everyone to use a metal pen or a feather pen, or shift to a tech-based system rather than using plastic ballpoint pens. So a more wholesome. That's how Higher Practices, my first book, took shape. It is an all-encompassing way to make a change, and do it in a very silent yet bold way, and create larger impact. So it speaks of various modalities one can adapt in their day-to-day life and bring about change. The second book that is in progress now speaks about lesser-known species of India. When we talk about the wildlife of India, what are the wild animals that you can name? The first ones that come are probably elephants, tigers, and leopards.
Yeah.
And not many could name species beyond these three. But India is actually home to a spectacular display of animals. It is one of the most biodiverse, rich countries in the world. The Western Ghats is one of the most eco-rich spaces and hotspots, biodiversity hotspots in the world. So we want to convey through our next book that there are species beyond the tiger, elephants, and leopards. And there's a lot we can do to conserve them. And they are integral to our ecosystem. They are native to India, and they must live, and they must be protected.
And some of them are endangered as well.
Yes.
And
so we do have species of dancing frogs, giant red snails, the dholes. All of these are facing shrinking habitats, and they're marked at different levels on the IUCN list of.
What is that?
The IUCN is a list of species, vulnerable species. They're marked based on threatened, less threatened, critically endangered. Okay. So India has a lot of species that need protection at the moment, and a lot of conservation efforts can build around them.
Right.
So we encourage people to partake in those. And as you said, the use of technology and AI really helps us. Back in the day, recording data and translating it numerically was a task to do. Today, with the help of camera traps, data analysis and AI, we're able to generate a lot more futuristic data and understand the cause and impact of one thing upon another. So people from science, from technology backgrounds, people who are into IT also stand a chance to really put their work to great use for conservation, for biodiversity encouragement.
Right. So interesting. I wasn't aware that there's so much data collected, and there could be data science around conservation and understanding habitats of different species and how our interactions.
Yes. So one can simply use Google Earth to understand shrinking habitats, to measure past.
How do you do that on Google?
So you can probably draw up a timeline seeing, you can visually draw and see in terms of kilometers and square meters the green cover that exists in a particular area and how it is shrinking over a period of time.
You can time lapse it over many years and
create a time lapse and see, and probably see, mark down a location where a species was actually spotted, and then try and make efforts to rebuild a green corridor there. So technology really can help in growth. So we use a lot of geospatial data in our work, in fact, to draw maps of where we wish to set boundaries for human beings not to encroach beyond for urbanization related activity. So tech plays a great role, and of course
there are some projects I think from some of these satellite companies. They have this open source maps called Galileo and all of that, which shares weather, humidity, and all of that. So do you use such kind of stuff as well?
So as I said, we are using every possible way of conservation or every possible tool involved to gather rather larger momentum and to seek more results. So camera trapping is often a tool that we use. Apart from that, we use geospatial data as of now. But I think with progressing times, we will venture into other aspects of technology that we could use.
And when is the so you also spoke about the book, the second book. It's more of a illustrative book. It's more,
Yes. So,
more on that side.
Yes. So we realized that we want to hit a larger audience and make more people connected to nature and its life forms, and we want to do that through illustrations and pictures, because it captures more senses and has a larger retaining capacity. So that book is in translation and should take a year or so to be available, and that will convey the mascots of India's natural world.
Okay. Great. I think that's one thing we'll look forward to. We'll have it in our office shelves.
Sure.
Both of those books. And,
Always a pleasure.
And encourage more people to get into this. Thank you so much, Karan, for giving your time and sharing all of this great work you're doing, and also spreading that the love and passion for conservation.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wonderful having you.
Yes, and coral polyps once again. Yes.